And so I started finding out about nature activities and then designed activities myself. And I started to see that children, they really came alive. Somebody once asked, how do you evaluate your teaching methods? And there are different ways that we can use, very good ways. But I think there's one way that shows a lot of common sense, is to just look at their faces. Because children, if they're like this, you know they are connecting with the subject, aren't they? It doesn't mean anything to them, and no matter how cleverly we present it, it doesn't matter. But when they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and they're leaning into the experience, then we know. And I found after using these activities that it's so much easier to convey information because you know it's received. One of the principles of sharing nature to teachers from around the world is to experience first, then talk. Doesn't mean that you introduce something that you're teaching and get them excited through a story, but realize that from the deep experience becomes interest. A lot of people think that caring comes from knowledge, but caring comes from interest, and interest comes from having fulfilling experiences in nature. When I wrote Sharing Nature with Children, almost all the books were called Teaching Nature to Children, or teaching, and they use that word, but I never really liked the word teaching, because teaching conveys that, well, I'll just demonstrate something. In teaching, what you have here is children standing here, and you have nature over here, and you're right here. Teaching the children and nature. Of course, a better way to do it would be to, with the child, look at nature, and they can feel your love and your interest, and you can point. But a part of every experience that's so important is to take the child and take nature and bring them together so that the child has their own revelation in nature. And a part of every experience, we want nature to be the teacher without any interference. And this is why intuition is so important. You know, science has been an incredible tool. It helps us to understand the uniqueness of species and the consequences of our actions. It gives us a language to communicate and talk with other people. But science, what it does is it describes reality. It's our intuition or calm feeling that helps us to perceive it directly. And also, science is interested in all the diversity of life. And it's the intuition that sees it all holistically and brings it all together. And so the intuition is much more aware of the unity of life. You know, the science of ecology is the interrelationship of all lives, and that science has to be based on a universal underlying truth, doesn't it, for it to be true? And it reminds me of when John Muir, when the theory of evolution was coming out, being a good man of science, John said, I agreed with that theory. But they always talk about the survival of the fittest and on and on and on. And my experience of the wilderness is one grass vast universal harmony. And that's what nature and life is to me. You know, that's another principle that in sharing nature we think is so important, is that don't do things only for nature, but do things with the spirit of nature. And what is the spirit of nature? Well, you know, snakes are eating mice and birds are being caught by hawks, but underlying that, there's a sense of joyful serenity, isn't there, when we're really quiet? I remember going up to a seldom traveled wilderness valley, and there was little cascades coming down the side of the hills, and it was flowers, and it was in July, and the whole valley was alive, and I could hear and feel all the flowers and the rocks singing with a sense of joy. And I'm sure that you've had that experience too. And I don't see the nature spirits, but I can really appreciate that they're alive because it was just so joyful there. And when we can get people in touch with nature, with life on that level, then they'll trust life, won't they? And they'll have something that is very dynamic and very profound that they'll be able to communicate and share with others. And so with all these activities, it's to really open doors for people to have that kind of experience. And the activities are very easy. People can have a lot of success with, and they don't have to know a lot of technical information. When I was in Australia, I was leading the National Park Service Rangers in a workshop, and we were doing the activities, and every once in a while they'd say something, and I'd say, "Is that a plant or is that an animal?" I didn't really need to know. I mean, it's helpful to know those things, and you can enhance and tell stories, but the experience of nature is not a verbal one, it's not an intellectual one, is it? And so this